Welcome to the Hour of Power. My name is Cheryl Jackson. I just want to say thank you so much for joining us again. Normally, my shows are really upbeat and it's full of life, and we're laughing and we're singing and we're talking about how we're going to change the world. And this is one of the same type of shows, changing the world. It's an issue that I have to face on my platform, and I have to bring the voices together that are very loud when we talk about something as powerful as what we're about to talk about today. So, for those of you who choose to join me, I have a couple of requests for you. First of all, I will ask that you start tagging your friends. Some of the people who have not registered, we have a probably limited number of spaces, maybe 20 or 30 spaces available. If you want to tag some people and tell them what's happening in this room right now, it's a subject that they need to hear, and we all need to play our part and be involved, no matter where we are located. I've asked some of the top names, or the top names, when it comes to racial injustice, the people who will speak for us and whose voices are very loud in this world. I've asked them to join me. The first person I called was Lee Merritt, attorney Lee Merritt. Lee Merritt is a civil rights attorney. He's emerging as a leader and influential new voice in the fight for social justice, a dedicated civil rights activist and trial attorney. Merritt runs a high-profile national practice focusing on victims of police brutality, hate crimes, and corporate discrimination. As an activist, he's championed police reform and community empowerment. He is currently representing Ahmaud Arbery's family parents in this tragic case of their sons being murdered and justice being delayed. Welcome, Lee Merritt.
Thanks, Cheryl. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. And the other person I called right after Lee Merritt said yes, I said, now who's the loudest voice that I know that's probably talking and may not even respond to me, but I'm certainly going to see if he'll come on the platform as well. His name is Dr. Jamal Harrison. Y'all been emailing me saying Brian, so you call me what you want, but we all know who he is. He has the voice. He's a philanthropist, an author, motivational speaker, and entrepreneur, and he is the pastor of New Birth outside of Georgia. Welcome, Dr. Jamal Harrison.
Good afternoon, sir, ma'am.
First of all, let me just say thank you to both of you. I know you're extremely busy, so thank you for using this moment when we need to hear a voice, and hopefully after this hour of power, what I want you to be able to do is talk about what we citizens and as a whole can do together to activate so that our voice is raised, so that justice is served. Lee, you are the attorney. Introduce yourself as people know who you are, and this attorney for Ahmaud Arbery.
And I don't imagine there's too many people who have not heard of Ahmaud Arbery now, but for those who are not particularly familiar with the details, Ahmaud Arbery was killed on February 23rd of this year in a small town in South Georgia called Brunswick, Georgia. Actually, I call it a small town because we live in major cities, but for South Georgia, this is actually a big metropolitan city for the area. Ahmaud was an avid jogger. He was he was a student who had studied to be an electrician. He was 25 years old, and he made it a point to go out and jog every day. He would choose new routes, and one of the routes that he chose was through a community named Scintilla Shores. And the people who saw him running through Scintilla Shores saw him as a nuisance, as someone who didn't belong in the community. And on February 23rd, they alleging to stop him for a citizen's arrest, a group of community members who saw him frequent through the neighborhood, and he would stop by a property that was under construction as a young electrician student who was interested in that property and its development. They stopped him, or they attempted to stop him in using trucks and firearms and a coordination of what we believe would be a few people. At least two men have been arrested, Travis McMichael and Gregory McMichael, father and son. There is a third man who filmed the incident. It's the reason that most of you all have heard of it. His name was William Bryan. As far as my federal civil rights investigation goes, these three men are considered suspects who we believe acted in coordination to ambush Ahmaud, and Ahmaud being confronted with men with guns, cornered, and having his routes of ingress and egress cut off. He fought for his life. He was killed. It went 3 months. We went for a period of 3 months without any legal action taken against the men who ambushed him, despite the fact that there was a video. The video is not new. A lot of people feel like the video came out recently in the last couple of weeks. The truth is, the video was available to law enforcement on the day that this happened. It was a part of every file from every prosecutor who received it. But prosecutor after prosecutor after prosecutor, we're on our fourth prosecutor now, had a conflict because one of the men involved in this ambush was an investigator for the prosecutor's office. It's law enforcement, a 30-year lawman, and so the Glenn County PD refused to arrest him, and no South Georgian prosecutor would indict him until this video came to light. The Attorney General allowed us to responded to our request that a special prosecutor be appointed. A special prosecutor is someone who is not from the South Georgian community, someone with no clear bias. Is a sister named Joyette Holmes from Cobb County, who is an experienced prosecutor who did what you might expect a prosecutor to do in a situation. She immediately reached out to the family, to the attorneys, began to download the information. Someone we're confident at this point will vigorously prosecute this case.
Dr. Jamal Bryan, first, before we get into this, you are such an encourager. So if Ahmaud's mother was watching this, it was Mother's Day, and I have a 30-year-old son, and I can't imagine what she's going through. She was watching this right now. What would you say to her? And then what would you say to mothers like me how we can support her? Speak to that.
When I was working with Trayvon Martin's family some years ago now, Sabrina Fulton said something that riveted me to my core. She says, I am a part of a sorority that you can't pledge, a group of mothers who have lost their child and we didn't have a say-so. First, I would say to the mother that you have a right to be angry, a right to grieve, and a right to be in pain, but she ought to be in great comfort knowing that strong, uncompromising voices like Attorney Merritt are on the front line fighting for justice, and it's not going to go away quietly. At the end of the day, even after Mr. Merritt reigns victorious, as I believe he will, they're still not going to take the pain away from that mother. But the community is going to really just have to stand with her in lockstep to make sure that this doesn't happen to anybody else's son.
Is this something that we as African American mothers need to be afraid of now? I mean, it's happening more often than not.
Yeah, I think concern. I've read a meme, I think D.L. Hughley posted, is that the two gentlemen were arrested not because they saw the video, but because we saw the video. And it really speaks to the strength, the power, and the influence that we have. For Attorney Merritt, Sean King, Attorney Crump, to really be trumpeting this, it is needed and necessary, and it shows what our strength is. The reality is, a few years ago when we saw the case with Walter Scott in South Carolina, who was gunned down simply because of a lapse in child support, he quite frankly would have gone forth unvindicated had somebody not recorded it. And so being Black in America, our Uzi without a silencer is our cell phones. And so it's very important for us that we learn how to use our weapon and do it appropriately.
And even as we're speaking now about Ahmaud, we even have something was sent to me about Breonna Taylor. I know y'all are familiar with as well. Can we speak to that as well? I mean, how many more times are we going to hear this before we come together, not as African Americans, but just as people as a whole?
I'll yield to the attorney. He would know the numbers much better than I.
Yeah. And so we're dealing obviously now with a cultural thing, and I do want to take some time to mention Breonna Taylor. I am not the attorney in that case, but my brother Ben Crump is involved, and there's a very capable local woman of color there And I'm embarrassed I don't know her name. I did get her number earlier because I want to make sure that we're giving her all the support and advice that she needs during this time. She needs the same community support that Ahmaud does. Unfortunately, this happens so often that even within our community, there has been an imbalance of concern, right? I have a lot of different clients. But when a young brother dies, we have a backlash from the community that we don't see when a young woman is killed by law enforcement. And that's not okay. You know, our sisters' lives matter too. So I represent the family of Tatiana Jefferson as well. And I don't want those sisters' stories to fall off the narrative. It's not just Black men who are under attack, but it's the Black community that's under attack. And there's a corresponding explosion in women incarceration as well. There's been almost a 900% increase in women in jail in the last 20 years. And that's at a time when during the Obama administration, when the prison population began to go down for the first time. And so, and when you're talking about officer-involved shootings, you have to talk about the prison industrial complex, because what is empowering these officers to go out and kill Black men jogging, Black girls playing video games in their home, our EMT workers, the best of us, is that they are unfairly criminalized due to a bizarre so-called war on drugs. This really has always been a war on Black and brown communities. They went into that sister's home to serve a warrant, a drug warrant for somebody they already had in custody. And the homeowner, who was being met with force at their home, responded by, my understanding is, by attempting to protect his home. And when he attempted to protect his home, law enforcement riddled his bedroom with bullets where Breonna lay after working full time as an EMT, as a first responder, and she was shot to death. That's because our communities, our skin color itself, has been criminalized. Ahmaud, who was out jogging and stopping by a property, they said, well, he's trespassing. And you know what? Maybe he was. Maybe everyone who stops by property under construction is trespassing. I know I do it every time that I run, but I don't have the complexion for protection either. So maybe it's a criminal act when I do it. Instead of trying to change my behavior or the behavior of human beings, we need to change the perspective of our criminal justice system that sees us as human. The really scary thing about Ahmaud, and I don't mean to go on too long, the really scary thing about Ahmaud's case is not so much what happened to him. What happened to him was done by evil people with ill intent, and evil is not going anywhere. The truly horrifying thing is that our criminal justice system said it was okay, that they made no arrests for 3 months. And but for the really bizarre turn that the men who perpetrated this heinous act decided to record it and then share it with the world, that we probably would have not gotten any justice in this case.
Well, how do you speak to that? Because I'm hearing all the chatter, and I'm sure people come at you with William Bryan, who took the video of the story, and people are saying that he shouldn't be prosecuted because if it were not for him, there would be no video. So he's saying, no, I shouldn't be prosecuted. I'm the one that helped bring this case out.
If you can imagine, a picture from Tulsa, Oklahoma, or from any lynching in the early 20th century, you'll see whole communities going out with cokes and with their girlfriends, and there will be a body hanging in the background. And people would take a picture, they would post with it, and they would brag about it, right? This is in the time of Emmett Till, which we haven't transitioned from that from much. So if someone goes along with the lynch mob, corners the African American, blocks their points of exit, but then doesn't participate actively in the murder, but instead just records it and keeps it to himself for 3 months, doesn't share it with anybody. Doesn't share it with the public, doesn't speak out and say, hey, these men need to be prosecuted. I caught what they did on video. He should have gone to Ahmaud's mom 3 months ago. I have the evidence that you need. I know you haven't seen it. I know law enforcement has seen it and they've done nothing about it, but you need this immediately because she was desperately asking for help in the Brunswick community and no one responded. I think it is a shame that this man, William Bryan, is going around making himself out to be the victim when Ahmaud Arbery was murdered and he watched it happen. And he said nothing about it for 3 months.
You just said, do you need to add to that, Dr. Jamal?
No, I echo the sentiment. I think that anybody who is a friend to injustice is an enemy to justice. And so really he is, in my opinion, aiding and abetting. You'd be amazed, and Attorney Merritt could speak to how many people are in jail presently who didn't rob the bank but were in the car. Or how many people were in prison during a drug transaction and still had to go to jail. And so for 3 months, for him to sit silently, not on a moving violation, but on a murder, I think that he's absolutely culpable.
I came out maybe about 2 or 3 months ago and shared that I have a brother who is in prison right now, 2 life sentences and 45 years. He shot a man. The man didn't die, but they said it was that third time. It's harsh. And I think to myself, the man didn't die. He got shot in the leg, and I got a brother that's serving 2 life sentences and 45 years. But here we are trying to let someone not even be put on trial for recording the murder of a person. I mean, it's just I can't even believe it. Dr. Jabal, people are saying this, and I know you can speak to this. They say that this is a gun problem, but other people say it's a people problem. What do you think this problem is that's happening with us dying and getting killed?
I think it's an American problem.
Mm.
If you can imagine that here we are in the middle of a pandemic when African Americans are leading in victimization, that these governors in the White House changed their position when they saw who were the people that were dying. And so for us to have to fight COVID and corruption at the same time is absolutely dizzying. Uh, it's unnerving right here in Atlanta that on Friday the nightclubs open back up. And so this is systemic to the issue that we're in. And so somebody said years ago, the system isn't broken. This is what it was designed to do. And so I think that we have to dismantle it and build it back up. And that's why Attorney Merritt is really essentially a Thurgood Marshall for our generation, to really be on the front line and really fight the legal fight for us. The disconnect from our generation and the civil rights generation is that somehow or another we missed how to cross the bridge from protest to policy. The protest is fine, but the policy is what's so significant. So the advances of Martin Luther King Jr. Would have made no stride if it were not for the likes of Thurgood Marshall. And so we've got to make sure that we support our attorneys who are our present day activists. And so my job is just the first lap with the protests and the placards, but what Attorney Merritt and Attorney Crump are doing really help us cross the finish line.
And I think you just elaborated on one of the questions. Someone, Eric Hawthorne, said, "How can we put more laws in place to protect the Black community and make sure it sends a message to anyone who chooses to lynch us, for lack of a better word, kill anyone unjustly?" What do we do? I mean, we have these talks, but what do we do next?
I think the answer in part, and this is going to sound silly, but the answer is to run with Mod. Run with Mod is a movement at this point of people coming together and saying, look, there's actually an issue here. And we're not going to blame it on guns. We're not going to allow you to scapegoat that. There's a race issue here. And it's important. It's so important, Pastor Jamal, that you said this, that it's not corrupting the system. It is the system. If you look at the judicial system as it plays out in the Mod's case, you can see the reality for court systems all over the country. They were just caught here. And what you see is nepotism, corruption, racism, all playing out not only to murder a young man, but to exonerate those who were complicit in this murder. And so you have a judicial system that's not actually concerned about the law. The law said when you had someone on video and you shot them to death, and they had committed no crimes, then you had to go to jail. That's what the law says, but they weren't interested in the law. because they had a lawman who was the actor. And more often than not, and we've seen it in Tamir Rice and Eric Garner, and over and over and over again, that when lawmen break their own laws, they're not held accountable. And so when we say run with Ahmaud, this case, everyone admits it. You have a Republican attorney general who's told my mom, I'm sorry, not my mom, the mother of Ahmaud Arbery, that you're going to, that this corruption is clear, and we're going to request that the Department of Justice come in and look at this department. I'm saying let's not scapegoat Glenn County, Georgia, because it looks just like Dallas County. It looks just like Harris County. It looks just like Alameda County in California, where a young brother was just killed the week before the case broke out about Ahmaud. It looks like what's going on in Kentucky concerning Breonna. All of these things are tied. And there's a legal apparatus in place that is not concerned about it. Is not concerned about enforcing the law, but protecting their power structure. And so now we have the federal government, the president of the United States is now looking at this. The Department of Justice is now looking at this and saying, look, there's corruption here. We have to remind them that this is just a reflection of what's going on in our court systems, and there's no fixing it, by the way, because it's not broken. We need to dismantle it. There's been laws set into place over the course of 30 years that created the problem. The prison industrial complex is this formalized system of racial control that we're all learning about because of sisters like Ava DuVernay and the 13th Amendment and the other documentaries that she put out there. We know that this system exists to keep African Americans subjugated. First, we need to stop playing into their hands. And secondly, we need to come attack the system head on. And Ahmaud Arbery's case gives us a chance to do that because as we dismantle the corruption in Glenn County, in South Georgia, we use that as a model for what we need to do all around the country and stop pretending like this is an isolated region. South Georgia is not the worst place in the country. It's not. It's a reflection of the rest of the country.
Love it. I love it. Dr. Jamal, Ahmaud was described as a great person, an athlete, a friend. They said it was one that would give advice to his friend. He loved talking about his dreams. That sounds like your average person, me, you, everybody else. As a pastor, when you hit the pulpit, because I have some pastors, I have one as the pastor of a large United Methodist church in the Dallas area. How can I be most helpful to my people for the sake of justice on Ahmaud's behalf and the associated issues culturally? And I also want to add to that, Dr. Jamal, that every time this happens, and even when it's not happening, you're always talking about, I see you, we're always talking about, how do we encourage pastors like this as a large United Methodist church in the Dallas area, white church at that? How do we get them involved so they are standing side by side when we kick off this initiative, as we begin to put our voices together? But then how do we continue the initiatives? Who can make graphics? Who can say on this date, like we did, walk with the mom, I walk for mom because it's his birthday. But after his birthday, what do we keep doing continually until the laws get changed so that people can understand we're no longer taking it anymore? It's not a moment.
Yeah, I think the pastor outside of Dallas should be partnering and aligning with outspoken voices like Pastor Freddie Haynes. We can't do these kumbaya services just during Dr. King's birthday or even in this crisis, but how much more forcible would it be if we had allies from white congregations to stand with us to speak to the sin in America? And America's original sin is racism. And so from his pulpit to speak out against it, that this does not line up or mirror with the Word of God. At this point, we are beyond symbolism. We need substance. And so while it is that we're all cloistered at home, you know what it would mean for this white pastor of United Methodist Church. Doesn't even have to do a rally, but to, I don't know, share this live conversation to his members, which they would not expect, to really challenge the evangelicals who have wholeheartedly stood with this president and this administration to speak to it, that this is an ongoing calamity And I am afraid that we become desensitized
Mm.
from all that it is that we're seeing. That we go from uh, Brunswick, Georgia, to Louisville, Kentucky, and then we got to go to Indianapolis all in one weekend. So we are dizzy because we're not sure. Do we grieve over Andre Harrell, Little Richard, Betty Wright, or do we? Yeah, this has been a traumatic weekend
And then we go
for
right to
Black
the
people living
coronavirus.
in America.
Right.
That there's so much that we've got to deal with and unpack. And so it doesn't. Everybody's not going to protest. And right now, we're asking the people in Brunswick not to. Everybody's not going to march. We want you to stay safe and do social distancing. But you can, in fact, do electronic outrage.
Oh,
That you're writing the GBI, Georgia Bureau of Investigation. You are calling immediately for the arrest of those who turned a blind eye towards this case when they had all of the data and willfully allowed it to be swept under the rug until there was a lump in the carpet. And so everybody has a place and a station in this movement in which they can play a part.
Lee, you want to add to that, attorney?
Yeah, just to echo what Dr. Jamal says, when I said run with Mod, it's literally a website, runwithmod.com, and it will lay out those steps, those phone numbers that you can call, those letters that you can write, the advocacy that you can do from home, and then it will include how to connect this to the struggle for Breon and for other folks that we organize for on behalf of the Grassroots Law Project, and so. It's now, and you know what? I will say this for our community. In this case, as we struggle with the coronavirus and we realize that it's impacting our community more than anyone else, and that when law enforcement goes out and they're impacting social distancing rules on the community, we find that it's only our community that gets social distancing with brutality, and other communities get polite suggestions. As people sit home and they take in all of this, they wanted to do something, and I've had a larger community response to this case than I've ever had, and it's an opportunity really because we're all home and we're seeing this, and we're being forced to digest this information, and so now we can organize. I used to teach social justice movements or grassroots movements to schools, to high school students in Atlanta at South Atlanta School of Law and Social Justice. And when I was down at the school, we said there were three ways to get people to be activists, essentially, to convert people into activists. First, they had to be aware of injustice, to be intimately familiar with the details, to understand it. And then they have to take it personal. And that's more of an individual thing. Either you can see how terrible things are once you're aware of it and get back to your job, or you can take it personal and say, I have a personal responsibility in my profession, no matter what it is. If I'm a cook, then I'm making sure that the homeless in Atlanta have nutritious meals to combat the spread of this disease. If I'm an artist, then I'm putting up a mural about Ahmaud Arbery, about Brianna. If I'm an attorney, then I'm using my skills to challenge the police departments in my community. But you take it personally, that gives you the opportunity to get active. So during this coronavirus epidemic, we have the opportunity to become aware of more, to take it personally, and to find out ways specifically to get active. And if you want to get involved in this case, you can go with runwithmod.com to become personally involved. If you just in general want to know how you can use your profession, your skills, your background, your training to change the culture, we ask you to join Grassroots Law that you can find on Instagram or social media or grassrootslaw.com.
I want to also mention, I see Watermark Dallas Church. I mean, there's a lot of huge churches right now, Pastor and Lee, that are on this chat that I see that if we can get them involved, it does break the racial line. If we get them side by side, wouldn't it be great? I know we say we don't need to protest because it's coronavirus, but we can protest via our social media. Same way we say Run with Mod, we can say Run with Mod where we change that and have that be our profile on Facebook. That's our profile on Instagram. So when people look on those pages, that's all they see. And if someone doesn't know about it, which I don't know how they can't, then that would make them be curious as to who is this person and what do I need to be doing? Um, I'm going to switch over just a little bit, just for a moment, and let's just talk about the African American church and community as a whole in terms of the coronavirus and people getting sick and the churches staying open. And I grew up Pentecostal, but I'm not that anymore. But I still have faith and I still have the belief in God. And we were always taught, to have faith. But can you talk about, Dr. Jamal, about us being careful and about you closed your church, you've kept it closed, thank God. But talk to these people that are trying to open up their church. For what purpose?
And they're marching, Sister Jackson, under the mantra that they're going in as an act of faith in God. I think that the real faith is not going in.
Yes.
In that somehow or another we have shrunk wrapped God and said the only way I can find him is in church. The reality is, embarrassingly, the church is the last of the Mohicans. We are the last to go digital. You will be amazed, Attorney Merritt, that 73% of Black churches don't have streaming capacity.
Right.
73%. The New York Times published 2 weeks ago that a third of all churches will not reopen after the pandemic because they, quite frankly, cannot survive, didn't have online giving, didn't do community enrollment and engagement. I am haunted by the notion that historians may report that the Black church was the incubator for COVID-19 in our community because we didn't close. Isn't it amazing that we're here 8 weeks into quarantine and nobody is doing any op-eds that the mosque needs to close? Nobody is saying the synagogue needs to close. Nobody is saying the Baha'i temples need to close. It's only in our sector of faith for several reasons. One, the church is culpable because the church never taught meditation. We've only taught corporate worship and corporate expression. So the people who are in the most pain are people from the Black church because we taught in prayer only 50%. We taught people how to talk to God, but never taught them how to listen. In Germany, they opened back up last weekend, Cheryl. I'm amazed. I can't wait to see what happens here. And say, oh, y'all can go back in church. You just can't sing because it's transmitted through the mouth. Right. So you can't sing. Well, how's that going to impact the Black church?
I don't understand.
Oh, yeah, no. And I think the key is
here
that nobody is talking about. A lot of the churches are rushing back because of economics,
right,
which is the reason why a lot of these businesses are opening back. The majority of our Black businesses did not receive stimulus, woefully so. That much more of our Black churches. And many people, when they think of the Black church, they think of Greenleaf. They think of the size of Bishop T.D. Jakes or Bishop Noel Jones. The reality is most Black pastors are bivocational and most Black churches are under 70 members. Yeah. So the pastor ain't balling out of control. First lady is in there cleaning up the church on Thursday.
What?
The only person on the payroll is the little boy playing the drums. So I think that we got to have a different level of compassion. But watch what the Bible gave us the prescription and says our people die from a lack of knowledge. And because we're not giving real up-to-date information, then we're losing ourselves.
Crazy.
And can I draw the bridge here? Because I haven't thought long and hard about the impact of the coronavirus and how it might change the Black church. As a civil rights attorney, I started thinking about how it might change the practice of law, and particularly how it might impact prisoners in the most incarcerated nation, not only in the world, but in world history, with almost 7.2 million people under some form of state supervision, and then 2.2 million people actually held in cages where it's impossible to social distance. There's a fire going on in Fort Worth, Texas, right now, where the federal prison has the most coronavirus cases of any one facility in the world. It's all taking place in Fort Worth, Texas, right now, and no one's talking about it because no one talks about prisons. Prisons have become a taboo subject. My father just got out of prison, and he came here to live with me. My brothers are both felons, and we all have those members in our family who are going to be impacted by prisons because 1 out of 3 Black men in America go to prison at some point in their lives. The prisons are going to be extremely important for us, and the only incubator, by the way, real transition we have between the prison and the streets is the church. The church is the only person, the Black church is the only people who are consistently doing missions to the prisons. I know because as a kid, they took me to the prisons to do missions there. And by the way, it was the Black church that gave me an international perspective by taking me to Mexico and taking me to other countries so I could see what the world was like outside of South Central LA. The church is extremely important, and the coronavirus is killing it along with the prisoners. And so this is, and I know because I was raised in Bishop. My bishop's going to kill me, but West Angeles Church of God in Christ,
Bishop Blake,
of the Bishop Charles E. Blake, and we've been getting notifications that no sector of the church has been more impacted than the Kojic leadership. All across the country have been dropping because of this coronavirus pandemic. So we find ourselves in an area of common suffering, right, as Black people. And if the church is at siege, and the prison population or young Black folks are at siege because of this virus, maybe it's time that we stand together and protect each other. Maybe it's time to stand up. The church stands up for prisoners, and people reassert their faith. The reason I came out of South Central LA, and people wonder all the time, because I came out of some rough circumstances. The answer was because I read the Bible every day, because my mom made me, and they made me go to church every day. So I learned how to read. I became well-versed. I traveled. I cared about people and prisoners and things like that, because the church told me I had a responsibility to them. And we're missing that divide. And quite frankly, even as we go through this call, we've been mentioning activists in the community, like Pastor Freddie Haynes, who is my pastor in Atlanta, in Dallas. And when I was a student at Morehouse College, I was under the leadership of the pastors over at Newburgh. All of this comes full circle, right? We are the solution that we're seeking.
We are the solution. That's beautiful. Let's talk about. I'm just gonna bring it all out because I have a very diverse following. So I'm reading to the side of all of the chats, and people are saying this is so eye opening. I never knew all of this was happening. They'll go off and they'll either call their friends and tell 2 friends so that we can open their eyes. I don't know if you're familiar with this, Dr. Jamal, but I know Attorney Lee Merritt is. Let's talk about the beauty salon. I every day, just about, I saw John Wiley Price on the news saying, I've got over thousands of beauty salons in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that are closed and people are losing their jobs and et cetera, et cetera. And then we have one lady who stands up. Have you heard about this case, Dr. Jamal? Well, she stands up and says, oh, I'm going in and I'm going to open up and I'm going to, you can arrest me. And they arrest her. And then, I'm sorry, I have automatic lights in my office. And then they arrest her, put her in prison, and she gets out. Now we have 2 Hispanic ladies that were doing hair out of their homes, and they went in and arrested them out of their homes, but they let the Caucasian lady out of jail. And then who was it? Ken Paxton, was that what was? Someone went and they got Ted Cruz went and got his hair done by the lady who got out of prison. Lee, you can talk about more. Come on.
People are dying miles away from her shop at Loose Stairs because of their inability to social distance. And so you have the government, honestly, in a way, hypocritically saying, it's so important that you social distance that you'll be arrested if you don't. But they won't allow those prisoners to social distance. Most of them are pretrial detainees, people who haven't been convicted of any crime. They're being held there as suspects. Others are poor. I have a client there now, and we're filing a lawsuit on his behalf. Mind you, we've already filed a lawsuit on his behalf. He is a young brother who suffers from paranoid schizophrenia. His grandmother called one day. He's in the prison now, but his grandmother called his healthcare worker one day to say he's having a manic episode. He needs help immediately. I'm afraid to call the police for obvious reasons. They said, well, we're going to send the police, but we will explain to them that he's having a manic episode and don't kill him. They showed him, the brother's name is Lou Liggins. This is a case that is not confidential at all. It's something that you can look up. They went to his home where they found him having a manic episode. His mom is on the porch saying, please don't kill my baby. They say, ma'am, we won't kill your baby. And what do? You all know how the story ends. They go in and they shoot him because he had a cell phone on his person that they thought maybe was a weapon. The idea that we're going to give, and now he survived the shot. He's in prison, suffering from physical wounds and mental wounds. The judge has already said he's incompetent to stand trial because he was so extremely health compromised, mentally compromised. Instead of giving him the help that he needs, we're exposing him to the coronavirus while we're giving this woman $1 million, raised $1 million on the GoFundMe. The governor's going to eat at her cafe because
she's got the PPP funding, and they did a GoFundMe page for it. They're telling me right now it was Ted Cruz. He went to her salon and got his hair cut, and they raised $500,000 on a GoFundMe page saying, great for her. She stood up for her rights. But we have go ahead.
And I'm sorry, Cheryl, let me tell you what happened there. Her community stood up for her. And her community is the people who identify with her and saw her as a human being and somebody who had equal rights as to everyone else, but not really equal rights to all real American citizens. They don't treat our population, particularly our prison population, like they're really human, like they're worthy of respect, like they have constitutional rights. And more importantly, our community doesn't stand up for it, right? Because if our community responded to our brothers and sisters in prison the way the white communities responded to this sister,
it was a beautiful thing. That was unity at its finest. It really was unity at its finest. But Dr. Jamal, that's what we want to talk about. How can we come together, unity at its finest, with Ahmaud? We talked about how do we make sure that we get this case done and we stay together moving forward? I mean, it's so many people talking about we need to do this, and this can be the foundation. What do we need to do? Do we
all of it points back to economics. And what if you look at Cheryl, attorney, the fact that 30 million Black people received a stimulus check? What would happen if out of that stimulus check, all of us spent $200 of it in Black businesses? There's so many Black businesses that are getting ready to collapse and fold because they're getting ready to support. Support is a verb. Don't tell me you support me. Show me you support me. And so I don't minimize her stance of wanting to take care of her family or really support her business. What I minimize is, when are we really going to support ours? The reality is, unless you live in Georgia, you can't go to the mall. Unless you live in Texas or Florida, you can't go to the mall. So go online and support Black businesses. That's what our Black entrepreneurs need and want in this hour, and we're going to have to really create that.
When we say we want a proper justice, someone asked me, they said, what does that mean? When we say we want proper justice as African Americans or people in general, what does that mean?
Well,
attorney?
It's the illusion. Unfortunately, it's the illusion that we can go into the courtrooms and get the same outcomes as our white counterparts. In other words, if Ahmaud was a white jogger in a Black community who was chased down by men with guns and shot to death, there will be no question, and it's really not up for debate. Those men would have been arrested if not shot on the scene. And so when we say we want equal justice, we want the same justice that white folks receive. Right now, we've got what I've called for a long time, colored people's justice, right? It's if you really stand up, if you make a lot of noise, and if you have a video, right, of the incident, um, then maybe we will begin to give you an indictment. Because even it's going to be important that the community stays with this case and every case, unfortunately, until the conviction. Because if we pull up for a second, they're just going to give us indictment. So um, um, I call it an illusion that we can get those out of the courts, because the courts, as they exist now, under the laws that exist now, uh, will never be a place that we can go to for equal justice. We have to take control of the legal apparatus in our respective regions. We need to be paying attention to the judges. We need to be invested in the district attorney's race. And Cheryl, you can say this in your own personal experience as you grow in stature and influence, and to become the major powerhouse that you're becoming. You can go into the DA's office now. And if the DA rejects you and doesn't hear you as you talk to them about their family member, then you can impact the outcome of their next election. And that's how power works. That's how power brokering works in this country. We need to begin to use our collective resources to pay attention to our governmental system, particularly our judicial system. Because look, and we're on the eve of an election. We've been voting in people who are instituting policies against our interests on both sides. We've been giving up our vote in exchange for nothing on both sides. And so we now need to be going to the powers that be. If you all want to get elected, you all want the votes. What does our community specifically, and we need to stop apologizing for that. What does the Black community get out of this? Because the Black community is specifically under attack by the criminal justice system. It's being targeted by the coronavirus. Why isn't there a Black stimulus package specifically geared for the Black community during the coronavirus? We're impacted by it more than anyone else. But we need to become effective lobbyists for our community and show them where the power lies.
Siobhan is asking me, why do we not have more platforms like this one on a continuous basis? It seems as though when something like Ahmaud and Trayvon Martin, something like that hits, that's when I guess you're saying, and everybody else come together and say, hey, let's talk about it. Why aren't we talking about it? Why we get CNN when this happens? CNN opens up and we see CNN, sometimes MSNBC or other channels. But once it's gone, really think about it. We aren't really pushing it. So why aren't we? Why don't we have a show something like this? Do you think that people are going to get tired of it? What's the answer to that? And should we continue to talk about it on a weekly basis?
Our people have become more driven towards entertainment than empowerment. By virtue of the fact that BET no longer offers us news. TV One no longer offers us news.
True.
You look at the number of African American blog sites that are completely around entertainment and gossip, like what's happening on Love and Hip Hop and what color diapers does Beyonce's baby have on? And we don't really ride into the issues that this attorney is trumpeting for us. And so we've got to really reclaim that knowledge is power. And we are powerless because we're not studying, we're not researching, and we're not really analyzing with critical thought. Everything that's being said is not necessarily true. The numbers are not going down, especially in the Black community. And so I wish that we had more platforms like this. That's why what it is that you're doing is so beneficial and so helpful. Thank you for what you do. I'm appreciative. You're helping us to really get the word out.
And I think that we should probably start bringing more people from all walks of life and from all states. So as we get closer to this election, this is something how our voices need to grow. Someone's over here talking about change.org is what I think it is. And I think that's where you go in and, you start the petitions. I think
Right.
something that could possibly develop from this conversation saying we need change. And we literally, I know Sean King is doing a phenomenal job at when something comes up, let's bring this to the forefront of the matter. But I think I'm going to agree with what they're saying to us is that we need a consistent voice and different people coming in and chiming in, especially up to the election. I'm here, I'm in like 28,000 square feet. And I told them, I said, use my place for a consensus survey location so that all voices are heard. We feed the senior citizens. I want to make sure that they have a right to vote. So bring in the voter registration here so they can help. I feed the homeless. So wherever we are, we need to speak to the people that even if you're a servant like me and doing a nonprofit or whatever you're doing, you need to make sure that these people have registered to vote, that they have a voice when November comes and the election comes, because change will happen unless we begin to talk together to change it. Would you agree? And to the preachers, I mean, I know we're not supposed to mix politics, with the pulpit, but you can still say vote, can't you, Pastor?
Oh, I do. I mix all the time. That's my cocktail of choice. I'm always up
Right.
there. I think that the prophetic legacy of the Black church was always to speak truth to power. Dr. King was consistent in doing that. And the original tenor of the church was we didn't have BET, we didn't have TV One, and God knows we didn't have Zoom. The pulpit was not a place for entertainment, but it was for information, empowerment, and equipping. And somewhere over the last 25 years, we've abdicated intellectual discussion for emotional tantalization. And so we just want to feel good. But the job of the pastor is to unnerve and offend. If you all like everything that I'm saying, so I tell the members of Newburgh, if I go 6 weeks of preaching and you agree with all my sermons, I have done something wrong.
Right.
If something I said should disrupt you all's dinner, say, can you believe Pastor said this today?
Mm-hmm. Oh, they mad at it.
Yeah, I'm not a cheerleader.
Yeah, right.
Right.
I've seen it. I know you
And Sister Cheryl, if I may offer this to those, I don't think we give ourselves enough credit, and our defeatist attitude has the ability to stomp out hope. We are doing these things; they are happening, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people, especially when a case like Ahmaud, what I hear more often than anything from the Black community, them boys gonna get off. They gave you an indictment. The Attorney General gave you a special prosecutor. There's a federal investigation. When our voice got really loud, things started to happen. They started to make an arrest, but the naysayers were still there saying they're going to get off. Uh, you know, or Jordan. They said the same thing about the person who killed 15-year-old Jordan Edwards, but he went to jail. The person who killed Corey Jones went to jail. The person who killed Laquan McDonald went to jail. The person who killed Botham Jean went to jail. We're actually changing the system. It's just we're not talking about it because news is not sexy right now. And so we have power. And if we keep telling ourselves we don't have power, we're not organized, and we don't have leaders, then we accept that lie. It's not true. We have great leaders. We have great platforms.
Yes.
I learned about what you were doing, Cheryl, with Minnie's Food Pantry during the Hurricane Harvey epidemic, right? Or issue, the Hurricane Harvey crisis. And I could have said then, it would be nice if we had a food pantry year round, for people who are actually hungry in our community. Well, the fact is we do. I only cared about it when it impacted me because there was a storm going on.
Let me interject that, Lee. Because of what we did in terms of serving people in Hurricane Harvey and making 52 trips from Dallas to Houston, the voice and how loud our voice was, it landed me a free building, 8,000 square feet with
Wow.
So now I have a location in Houston where we're serving in Houston, we're in New York, we're in Pennsylvania. And so that speaks to the power of us. If we're loud in our voices and we come together, change can happen consistently.
Right. So I challenge anyone. So if their area is feeding the homeless and taking care of our communities, community empowerment, they can go to Minnie's Food Pantry. That platform exists year round in times of crisis and in times of peace, and during the pandemic and before it. If they're looking for a place for spiritual edification, and not only spiritual edification, that a place that's not so heavenly minded that there's no earthly good, the Dr. Jamal's church is open. It's been open. He's available. And if you're looking to get involved in criminal justice reform, scroll down my platform. We didn't just start doing this with Ahmaud.
Right.
We've been doing this, right? And so I say to those, and without criticism, we will take criticism. We need to be better organized, more amplified, and more connected. This is the first time that Dr. Jamal and I have worked, but I've been in the city. That won't happen again. I will be, speaking with Dr. So we do need that kind of connection. However, if you are the person saying, where are all these platforms? The platforms are asking, where are you?
Wow. Wow.
And we're coming to the end of this great hour of power. I've got about 3 minutes, and I'm gonna leave with this quote a sentence that I want you to answer. And I'll start with, since you were talking, Lee, I'll let you go first. And I'm taking it from right what Dr. Jamal said. What do we want historians to report about us? When they go back and read these history books about everything that's happening, what do you want them to say when your name is put in that history book?
I hope to say what they said about Dr. King. Dr. King came to the end of his life, and he realized that he was having a mountaintop experience, that he was looking over into the promised land, and that he was not going to get there with us. And he said, I just want to do God's will. God put something in me to do, and I want to do that. And I believe that it has, and I'm learning about his plan because I'm spending time, like Dr. Jamal said, meditating and learning about his greater plan for my life from him. Dr. Jamal didn't have to tell me because I get that personalized message from me by connecting with my creator, my source. And I want them to say that we ended mass incarceration in the United States, that we set 7.2 million people free and ushered in a new era of freedom for African Americans that they've never experienced in their 400 years in this country. That's my goal. And I believe that we can do that if we work together.
It's beautiful. Dr. Jamal, what do you want the historians to say about you, sir?
Yeah, I think that the soundtrack for all of us that never went platinum, never hit a Billboard chart, was if I can help somebody as I pass along, cheer somebody with a word or song, then our living is not in vain. The reality is, Dr. King reminded us, anybody can be great because anybody can serve. And so there's something that we can do, and for countless droves, it may not be to preach from a pulpit, it may not be to litigate in a courtroom, it may be to collect canned foods in your neighborhood. But at every capacity, if we do all of it with clean hands and a pure heart, it's going to make an impact and a difference.
And I'll end it. 12 years ago, I started Minnie's Food Pantry, and on the windows, it was a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King, and I've had it at every location we moved 4 times since. He said, I have the audacity to believe that people everywhere deserve 3 meals a day. I'm reminding of my mother. She died on a Thursday, but on that Sunday morning, she was preaching. And she whirled around, she picked up her purse, and she emptied it out to everybody that was in the church, everything that she had. And she said, if I were to die tomorrow, I want people to know that I want my tombstone to read that she loved God and she loved his people. And it's without doubt that you two gentlemen does the same thing that my mother is saying. She loved God and she loved his people. And thank you for loving the people enough to share your time and your platform. I look forward to talking to you again soon.
It was a privilege. Thank you. Brother Lee, I look forward to connecting with you.
Yes, sir. God bless. Thank you so much, Cheryl. Thank you, Dr. Jamal.
She's showing us how, doing the work, she's making